With Miss Pandaria announced as our next stop in our classic journey, it's time to take a look at some of the features that the expansion brings to the table. In addition to class changes, new dungeons and raids, and new life brought to the open world, there are several aspects of the new expansion that makes me really excited to step foot into the expansion. In this video, I want to dive into 5 of those aspects that make me the most excited. But since we're a few months out from the actual expansion release, if you want to keep learning more about all things MOP, hit that subscribe button and join the Riyani Discord, as that's pretty much always where you'll get access to new information first. And with that, let's get into it. Challenge Modes was the first new dungeon progression system since the heroic dungeons in TPC, and could be considered the first rendition of the eventual dungeon system of Mythic Plus. Instead of being an infinitely scaling system, Challenge Modes bumps up the difficulty of all 9 heroic dungeons, gives you a timer to complete the dungeon, while scaling down all of your gear to 463 item level. The dungeons themselves don't give any loot apart from some valor, but depending on how fast you complete them, you'll get a rank of either bronze, silver, or gold. Getting a bronze rank for all 9 dungeons gives you the title of Undaunted. Silver gives you the option to choose 1 out of 4 mounts, and gold gives you access to the full iconic transmog that I'm sure pretty much all of us are familiar with, in addition to giving you a teleport to each of the dungeons completed on the gold rank. The iconic weapon transmogs from Challenge Modes are in fact not from this iteration of Challenge Modes. You'll have to wait for Walls of Draenor to get your hands on those. The content itself does not offer a great deal of replayability, as once you're done with the achievement, there is no real incentive to keep running them except if you want to show off how much of a gamer you are. There's a server-wide and a guild-wide leaderboard in-game for who completes each dungeon the fastest, and while it doesn't give you any reward for being number 1, everyone will know that you have an absolutely massive. With the gear getting scaled down to 463, there are quite a few funky interactions with the gear, and biz lists get kinda wild and new options for better loot gets presented with each phase. But if I could sum up the gearing philosophy in one word, that word would be sockets. Personally, I'll be looking to complete gold on every tank, and I'll definitely be making guides on how to get the best possible time. So hit that little subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with those coming out. As an absolute tank shill, I know I will have so much fun in Miss Pandaria. And if you look at a tank, I know that you will too. Every tank moves to a much more modern active mitigation playstyle, catching up to the design philosophy of the Cataclysm Death Knight. With that in mind, the balance between each of the tanks becomes significantly better. Are there differences in how good each tank is? Absolutely. And we'll cover that in much more detail when the tank tier list comes out. But it's much less apparent than in previous expansions, and every single tank will be viable, even if they may differ in power from tier to tier. While I think each tank becomes more interesting through the class changes alone, what truly makes them so fun and impactful is the changes to Vengeance. Originally, when Miss Pandaria was released, Vengeance cap was changed to no longer have a cap like it did in Cataclysm, while instead gaining 1.8% of incoming unmitigated damage as attack power. Not having a Vengeance cap led to some pretty cheesy and unintended gameplay behavior, so it was ultimately changed to be capped at the max health of the player, brought down to 1.5% attack power from damage taken, and a bunch of other changes to stop people from sitting down to get crits and standing in fire to gain more vengeance. Since we'll most likely be playing on a 5.4 version of the game, this is the vengeance we'll have from the start. But even in its nerf state, tanks will have incredible output. So if you enjoy topping the meteors on your bloody K in Kata, then you'll have even more fun in Miss Pandaria. The new class introduced in Miss Pandaria is just so much fun. The monk is divided into 3 roles through the talents, with Brewmaster for tanking, Windwalker for melee DPSing, and Mistweaver for healing. While Windwalker and Mistweaver are generally seen as middle of the pack in terms of performance, the Brewmaster monk is seen as one of the staple tanks with some incredible utility through high vengeance absorbs on yourself and your raid members with guard. With incredible AoE, all but unlimited movement, AoE stuns and permanent slows, Brewmaster will be the absolute best option for those looking to get speed clears in challenge modes. Every spec offers something unique to the way that we play the game that we haven't seen in Classic thus far. Brewmaster gets their active mitigation through a combination of buffs and their staggered management. Mistweaver can heal through their melee attacks in one-step fist weaving, and Windwalkers get to manage clones themselves to increase their damage output. Assuming we get access to the Monk in the MOP pre-patch, just like we have in the previous Classic expansions, I suspect we'll see a lot of people re-rolling come Mist. Mist Pandaria as an expansion culminated in you getting access to the iconic legendary cloaks that bring unique effects whether you're a tank, melee, ranged, or healer, but people often forget about the journey and the rewards you get along the way. There are 5 chapters to the storyline, and each of the chapters give you a big reward. Chapter 1 gives you a 500 main stat gem that you can place into a shot touch weapon. Chapter 2 gives you a bonus socket to your weapon. Chapter 3 gives you access to 4 legendary meta gems, which are incredibly powerful. Chapter 4 gives you access to an item level 600 cloak, which is 60 item levels higher than the best alternative. And then Chapter 5 finally turns that cloak into the legendary cloak with 1 out of 4 effects based on your role. Each of the chapters will require you to complete certain objectives in the current raid tier, like including sigil from the bosses, as well as objectives outside of the raid, like reputation farming, PvPing, and role-specific challenges. The drawback to this questline is that it can heavily dampen your incentive to play multiple characters, especially if you're looking to pick up an alt later into the expansion. However, looking at how they dealt with alt friendliness and legendary systems in Classic thus far, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some changes to how this system functions come MOP Classic. Is it a bit silly to have this as something to look forward to? Perhaps. But I remember having a ton of fun pushing my tunes into those endless ranks back in the days. For those uninitiated into the system that was introduced with Mist of Pandaria, Proving Grounds is a system that puts you into an arena of sorts where you have to fight waves of mobs based on if you're a tank, healer, or DPS. There'll be 4 difficulty tiers with Bronze, Silver, Gold, and Endless, where you'll be able to keep fighting wave after wave until they scale so high that it's impossible for you to continue. The gear scaling in there functions similarly to challenge modes and it gets scaled down. And just because you're spec'd to tanking, doesn't mean you can't try your hands on the DPS challenge and vice versa. There's actually an achievement to do just that. In my opinion, the system itself is great for just having a bit of fun, but also to truly try to improve as a player. When the stakes aren't that high, you can afford to try to focus more on aspects of your class that you are not usually very good at. It'll allow you to much more easily put yourself in an environment where you can focus on making adjustments to your playstyle and your UI, which you can then take into raid in order to perform at a higher level. These are just some of the changes and systems you'll see come Mist of Pandaria, and I'm super excited to bring all types of information regarding the expansion over the next few months. So if you'd like to follow along for that journey, hit that subscribe button in order to stay up to date. But that's all for now. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time.